All right, we are live. It is week 4 of the 2025 NFL season, and the road through the NFC North continues for the Cleveland Browns. Although I could say the same for the Detroit Lions, because for you guys, it's the road through the AFC North. But nonetheless, the Cleveland Browns are heading up to the Motor City to take on the Detroit Lions this week. So, with me is Ash from Roar the Lions UK. So I got to ask right off the bat, how did you get to be a Lions fan over in the UK?
So for me, it goes back, about 12 years now, where me and my friends at school, we were just starting secondary school. So it was about like 13, 14, sitting around. And one day in the common room, sitting there, and it's like, oh, there's this new game that's just come out on our phones called Madden Mobile. And we all downloaded it and they all picked their teams. And I was one of the stragglers. So they got all, like the good teams, like the Chiefs and the Eagles and the Patriots. And I was left with a couple of choices. And funnily enough, the two that I was choosing between was the Lions and a divisional rival of yours in the Pittsburgh Steelers, who obviously will AA Rod and his lot will be playing over in Ireland in about like 36 hours here. So that'll be fun. But for me, I'm from Birmingham, England. So we're a very industrial town, famous for building cars. So British Leyland, the Minis, Ford Rover, JLR, so Jaguar Land Rover, all these like high production things, industrial city. But also just fall on hard times. We're very looked down upon over here in the UK. The Brummie accent, has been voted consistently as less intelligent than being mute over here. So it just spoke to me. Something just spoke to me with that and that connection. And obviously, I'm also an Aston Villa fan, so I have a bit of connection to the Cleveland Browns, who one of our former owners, being Randy Lerner, who I know someone that Cleveland Browns fans will know a lot about. So you guys were also on my radar. Being a Villa fan, line on the logo blue, it just all spoke to me, and we started doing it. And while my friends have all sort of drifted away from the NFL, for me, it's become a hyperfixation where now 10, 12 years later, I'm sat here at nearly 1:30, 2 o'clock in the morning talking to you about football, when 10 years ago, it was a game I barely knew anything about. And I just liked, Calvin Johnson and Matt Stafford and the logo.
Yeah, Calvin Johnson's one of my all-time favorite wide receivers. It was a no-brainer that he was going to go in the Hall of Fame. But, you mentioned the elephant in the room. You guys trade Matthew Stafford. You bring in Jared Goff. And I thought Jared Goff would kind of be a bridge quarterback. As soon as you guys drafted Hendon Hooker out of Tennessee, I was like, okay, Jared Goff's only going to be there for like 1 or 2 seasons, and then you'll turn things over to Hendon Hooker. Jared Goff is just straight up laughing at me because he has come in there and you guys are just firing on all cylinders offensively. You've got Sonic and Knuckles, probably the best running back duo in the NFL. That was probably one of the more surprising draft picks, actually. I don't know how you felt about it at the time, but after you guys signed David Montgomery, you drafted Jahmyr Gibbs, and I'm like, wait, what are the Lions doing?
Yeah, it's so sort of going to the Sonic and Knuckles thing. That I think has been the dynamic they've wanted in the backfield since Brad and Dan. So Brad Holmes, our general manager, and Dan Campbell, our head coach. They've always wanted that kind of backfield rotation. So initially, way back when they started, it was DeAndre Swift and Jamal Williams who we signed, and it was that kind of dynamic where Jamal Williams was the goal line vulture and Swift was supposed to be your sort of open field pass catching back and the speedy back. Obviously, DeAndre Swift, for all the physical talents he has coming out of Georgia, never had the ball carrier vision. And Jamal Williams, well, very good speech maker, great at vulturing all those touchdowns. So that season where he scored like 17 rushing touchdowns, like 14, 15 of them from the inside the 5-yard line. He wanted a bit more money, so he went to the Saints. Poor choice on his part, obviously. And for a couple of million... very much so. And then a couple million more, we signed David Montgomery, this guy from the Chicago Bears. Like, he hasn't been really good. He's had some good flashes there, but he's never been consistent. And then we see this, and then we draft Jahmyr Gibbs to be that offensive weapon where he's one of the fastest backs in the league. He can take the ball in any situation and convert. Look at the 2 touchdowns he scored against the Ravens. The first one is your traditional inside zone duo, run it up the middle. And then the second one's a trick play where it's a speed option. Obviously, Goff tosses it to Amon-Ra, and then Amon-Ra tosses it out to Gibbs and he hits the edge. It just offers that sort of stability. And that's one of the reasons why Goff had turned from what was seen as, yes, he's a bridge quarterback we got so we can get an extra pick from the Rams. As you can hear my dog trying to give her 2 pence on it in the background. He did turn from that kind of bridge QB, oh, you're just here to stabilize the franchise, get us a couple of wins, and then we can draft a QB of the future, be it Hendon Hooker, where we drafted him in the third, or someone else who would get in that kind of position. And instead, it turns out, with hindsight and looking at what happened with the interviews he did on quarterback and all the stuff that's come out since then, the team really bought into him. Brad Holmes was with him in LA, knew what he could do if he had the right system around him and the trust. Because that's what happened at the end of LA, I think, is McVay didn't trust Goff anymore to run his system. And so they tried to look elsewhere. That's why they got Stafford. And it destroyed Goff. And then we've built him back up. He's come from the hard times of winning 3 games the first season, the second season, winning 9 games and just barely missing out on the playoffs because the Rams can't hold the Seattle Seahawks. Still going into Lambeau despite knowing you're playing for nothing and beating Aaron Rodgers in his last game as a Green Bay Packer. And suddenly, the dog's busting. And then suddenly,
I think your dog might secretly be a Browns fan.
Yeah, well, there might be. Yeah, I don't know. Like, she might be. I tried to train her in the right ways, but yeah, seemingly with some of the stuff she has said on our podcast before, I think she might be secretly a Browns fan for sure.
Okay. No, but you mentioned it. Like, you got Amon-Ra St. Brown. He is clearly your number one. I think there's a chance if the Lions repeat what they did last year, I think there's a chance Amon-Ra could win MVP. I know that award usually goes to quarterback, so Jared Goff would get more of the credit. But at least from my perspective, and tell me if I'm wrong, I don't think Jared Goff would be the same quarterback he is if you did not have Amon-Ra St. Brown.
Yeah, they definitely have like a symbiotic relationship where will Goff be the same quarterback if he doesn't have that security blanket that's a do-it-all player like Amon-Ra, where you can do things like line him in the slot, he just runs a simple hitch, or he can run the trick plays or the corner route that he took for the fourth down conversion against the Ravens to sort of seal the game. But at the same time, Amon-Ra, there's a reason he wasn't drafted till day 3 in his draft class. He's a good route runner. He's got all the physical tools, but he doesn't have that sort of elite body build that like AJ Brown's does, or even a Cedric Tillman and your guys. He doesn't have that ex-receiver build. And so I think it's sort of that perfect symbiotic relationship where they just both work perfectly together. Goff knows that Amon-Ra's going to get open with his route running and his physicality and his small stature, relatively small stature. And he knows he's going to catch it with the whole 202 balls after practice on the jugs machine. But also Amon-Ra is made better by Goff because Goff is that perfect timing quarterback that will sometimes just stand there. He knows he's about to get hit. He will still put the ball out there for Amon-Ra or Sam Laporte, whoever, to catch and take that hit. He's that kind of gritty QB that we needed because some other QBs around the league, obviously I'm not going to point any fingers, but, you know, the Dolphins one, for instance, starts to panic under those situations. Instead, Goff trusts his playmakers, takes the hit because he knows that if it gets the ball to Amon-Ra, it will go from being an 8-yard loss in the sack to a 20-yard gain, or help with Jameson Williams, you know, the development he's had in our system now. He could take a 5-yard crosser into an 80-yard touchdown easily.
Yeah, that's when I think your offense really took off, is you already had Amon-Ra on one side, but once you added Jameson Williams on the other side, plus the addition of Sam Laporta, that's when I think your offense really took off. And that's one of the key differences, I think, between the Lions and the Browns is you guys have a clear number 1 and a clear number 2 wide receiver. Amon-Ra is your number 1. Jameson Williams is your number 2. When I look at our receivers, yeah, you mentioned it. We have Cedric Tillman. We have Jerry Jeudy. But it doesn't feel like, at least for me, it doesn't feel like we have a clear number 1 wide receiver where, whether it's Joe Flacco or Baker Mayfield in the past, when we had Amari Cooper, any other list of the quarterbacks we've had, good God, it's been too many. I think we've had 40 since 1999. It's insane. But, like, when Jared Goff is in, like, a 3rd and 6, He knows he can go to Amon-Ra. He knows he can go to Sam Laporta. He knows he can go to Jameson Williams. As a Browns fan, I don't feel that same confidence to where I'm like, okay, we can go to Jerry Jeudy. We can go to Cedric Tillman. We can go to David Njoku. You know what I mean?
Yeah, like we were there at the start of the Jared Goff experiment. God, I remember that Simon Rod just been drafted as a rookie, and he didn't even take off until the second half of the season. So initially, we were looking at what was supposed to be Bashard Perriman as our wide receiver one, with obviously his dad Brett being a wide receiver three for us in the 90s, way back when I was just a speck in my dad's eye. He's cut at the end of preseason. So our wide receiver one was Tyrell Williams going into that first week against the 49ers. And he suffers a career-ending concussion. So at that point, our wide receiver ones were Quintez Cephas, who has recently signed with a practice squad somewhere. I think it might be the Rams again. He was our receiver one. Then Khalif Raymond, who we brought in as a sort of speed gadget guy and punt returner. He had to take over when Quintez Cephas broke his collarbone. We've been there, and it is a think about just finding that perfect fit in the system. Like, I really liked Cedric Tillman when he was coming out of in the draft class. I wanted that X receiver that now we finally got with Isaac Tesla, who, two of the greatest first two career catches for any NFL player ever. Though unfortunately couldn't corral either his targets against the Ravens this past week. I think it's just about finding that little spark. Like, Tillman could be it, but I think with the way that, at least what I've seen from watching the game against the Packers and the games against the Ravens when we were scouting them last week, because Flacco can't really utilize the downfield presence with Tillman, he can't really be used. Then you're looking at Jeudy, can he get open? And the chemistry's just not there in the same extent that Goff has with our receivers. And then Njoku, I remember way back when he really broke out as your tight end, back when you signed Austin Hooper, that big contract, and you drafted him as that athletic project that every key one was supposed to be for us. And then suddenly 2 picks later, the Rams take Aaron Donald, and we're forever haunted by that. It's just about just gutting it out sometimes, but you're in that kind of situation now to what I just talked about on our show, the Raw Lions show, where with Stefanski, does he have that time to work it out with the offense system? Can he afford to gut it out with Flacco and all these things and not have the offensive production to match it? Because I know obviously he's won the 2 Coach of the Year awards, he's taken you to the playoffs, and first coaches like the 60s to take you to multiple playoff appearances, but with the hot seat he's on, where he's having this roller coaster thing, and the offense is falling behind so much behind this defense that us Lion fans are really scared of. Like, talking on our show, most of it was talked about how we get around your defensive line and linebackers and safeties, because they're all really damn good. Yeah. If the offense can't keep pace with us, if we do find that breakthrough and we put up 3 touchdowns, that 21 points, looking back at what your offense has done so far this season, that might be enough. And that's not good for someone who's supposed to be an offensive coach, has put a lot of emphasis into the offensive line, drafting Quinton Junkins, who's an absolute breakout star for you. I love him. Dylan Sampson, all these running backs. You don't have if you don't have that offensive production to back up the defense and these pieces, especially from, as you say, the receivers just not catching. Like Harold Fannin, as great as he was for Bowling Green, the fact he's your leading receiver 3-4 weeks into the season isn't good, especially when you've got Jerry Jeudy, former first-round pick, and all these players, like some of these playmakers that, if they're put in the right situation, Jamari Thrash, God, as an FSU fan who's nervously looking at his phone every 5 seconds, see updates about that. Jamari Thrash, if he's put in the right situation, can be it. It's just about finding that chemistry with the QB, and finally, one person does it, and suddenly everything else will open up for you.
Right. No, you hit it directly on the head. Like Joe Flacco, he's not a mobile quarterback. If Aiden Hutchinson breaks through the offensive line, which I fully expect him to, because it's freaking Aiden Hutchinson, for God's sakes, easily a top 3 defensive lineman in the NFL, right in the conversation with Myles Garrett and TJ Watt. That's going to be another fantastic matchup. Coming off the heels of Micah Parsons against Myles Garrett. Now we're getting Myles Garrett against Aiden Hutchinson. But if Hutchinson or anybody else from that Lions D-line breaks through, Flacco isn't a very mobile quarterback, and he's 41. So he doesn't present this intimidating force. Maybe that's too strong of a word, but like, if we had one of our 2 rookie quarterbacks in there, that could present some problems for you guys, because I really liked Dylan Gabriel coming out of the University of Oregon.
Mhm.
He beat Ohio State in that primetime game in Autzen Stadium, and he has the ability to run and make plays when they aren't necessarily there. So it's not just stand around and, Aiden Hutchinson's coming, take the sack. Nope. I think part of it is Dylan Gabriel is a lefty, so that could have thrown you guys off.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of lefty quarterbacks. Other than Tua, I can't really think of any others. And then, of course, we also have Shedeur Sanders. Don't get me started on drafting. I was not a fan of it. But, at least he has this similar mobility that could have given you guys problems. But, we're sticking with Flacco right now. If I had to guess, Dylan Gabriel's probably going to start week 7 against Miami. But, no, while I do understand what you're saying about Stefanski being on the hot seat, I am not on the same page with that. I don't believe he's on the hot seat. The one who really should be on the hot seat, although you can't fire him because he's the owner, is Jimmy Haslam. Because since he's taken over, we've drafted Johnny Football.
God.
Yeah. We drafted Baker Mayfield and ran him out of town. And, let's trade for number 4. And, we're going to draft Shedeur Sanders. So many of these moves have Jimmy Haslam's fingerprints all over it. And I've said this. He feels like, I know Jerry Jones, is always on camera, on the microphone, doing a radio show. So, but hopefully you understand my comparison.
Yeah.
Jimmy Haslam is our version of Jerry Jones, just without being in front of the microphone or being in front of the camera.
Yeah, I completely get that thing. And yeah, as you say, at least with Jerry, he's kind of out there in the public. You can get his perspective. So the whole Micah thing, at least he came out and spoke about it. Unlike, Haslam, who just does some bad moves, like all those. The whole thing with moving you guys to a different stadium as well, trying to make more money, all this stuff. And it is, at least from the outside, my outside perspective, looking at you guys, it is so baffling because, God, I write our preview articles and I've wrote about half of it to go out to tomorrow. The fact that we go back to when the NFL really started getting going in the 60s, it was us versus you guys so many times. And we had all these ding-dong battles. And that's what bad ownership can do to you. Because the Lions have gone through that with William Clay Ford, who was that same kind of owner who was very he would have his fingerprints on things, but never really came out and said about it. So the infamous one is the decision to recoup Calvin Johnson's money when he retired, got his own football, the CEO, Rod Wood, who was a business guy through, to go to Calvin and basically demand his money. Like you can see, even now, 10 years later, it gets Lions fans rolled up as my dog absolutely barks about it. Those kind of bad owners can sink you, and it's not just in us Lions fans can relate to it, because look at the Tigers right now, to sort of bring it to another sport. What Guardians have just done to us a couple of days ago, overturning that thing because we can't invest in Scooble, can't trade for all these good things. That's what bad ownership can do to you. So my heart goes out, and I completely understand. I wish, and I can see his reasoning for what he's done, trying to find that dart throw. But then when he got it, to sort of, not to break bad memories, but looking back, that letting Baker Mayfield walk looks so bad in hindsight. But you have to take darts. But you have to. I think he was just trying to take dart throws, find his guy that they could support. Because I know Baker had that sort of clavicle issue, didn't he? The shoulder issue that ruled him out.
Part of my issue with Baker was, one, he had all those commercials, and he had more commercials than touchdowns. But honestly, my bigger issue with him was that he tried to be too much of what I call a Cleveland tough guy, because Cleveland is kind of like Detroit, where it's, you know, a blue collar type of town where you had to be a hardworking person. And I think when he suffered that shoulder injury in week 2 of the 2021 season against the Houston Texans, he tried to be, again, too much of a Cleveland tough guy by saying, I'm like you guys. I'm going to play through it the rest of the season. I'm not going to get the surgery. And that's where it all just spiraled downhill.
Yeah.
And for me, like, I liked Baker Mayfield. Would he be having the same success he is in Tampa if he stayed in Cleveland? I don't know. Because it never felt like Stefanski fully trusted Baker. Like, you know, there were many times or the season where we made it to the playoffs with Baker, and we should have beaten the Chiefs in that divisional round. That game still haunts me. You know, it was more so because we were running the ball effectively and we had a strong defense. Yeah. On that point, though, like, it's interesting that the Browns defense is doing as well as we are.
Yeah.
Because I have felt like in the past, Myles Garrett has been way more effective when if he's Batman, he's more effective if he has a Robin on the other side.
Yeah.
When we had Zadarius Smith, who ironically we ended up trading to you guys, but when we had Zadarius Smith on the opposite side, or even when we had Jadeveon Clowney, you couldn't double team Myles Garrett because, there's Zadarius Smith on the other side. Oh, there's Jadeveon Clowney on the other side. So Myles Garrett was getting more one-on-one coverage. So the fact that we are playing this well defensively and Myles Garrett doesn't have a Robin is like crazy to me. Like, I've really liked Mason Graham, the rookie we drafted out of the University of Michigan. You know, we've held the running game in check, and I know there's been some trash talk about that. Like, your offensive coordinator has said they haven't seen a run game like ours, and Myles Garrett responded, so that we'll see how that goes. But it's an interesting thought that Myles Garrett doesn't have his Robin, and yet we're this dominant on defense.
Yeah, so for me, it does come down to the fact that you quite mentioned him, Mason Graham and Willie Collins that you've got, and that sort of interior. It's kind of like the same system we're trying to do. So that's been the big gripe recently for the Lions fans is getting Aiden Hutchinson, that running partner opposite him. It was supposed to be Zadarius Smith going into this offseason, but unfortunately we cut him because of financial cap stuff. We didn't want to pay him the $10 million bonus, so we cut him. He obviously wanted to come back, but could never work out that price point, and now he's playing in Philadelphia. It's by the by. But instead, what our system predicates on having that interior pressure to force people towards Hutch. And I think that's what you guys are doing. I know obviously you run a slightly different system with Jim Schwartz's wide 9 system to the 4-3 over we run that sometimes looks like a 3-4, sometimes it's a 4-3, depending on the sort of personnel we're facing up against. But that's what we kind of do, where it worked to a T against the Ravens on Monday Night Football, where everyone kind of held their rush lanes, forced Lamar to start scrambling, and then the edge rush crashed down. That's why Hutch managed to get his sack and his forced fumble on Derrick Henry. That's why Al-Qadim Mohammed, who is our breakout star for us this year, 2.5 sacks in that game, has got another one against Caleb Williams. So, you know, despite being paid something like a 20th of what Michael Parsons is getting paid, he's currently got one more sack than him, and he's gone up against more mobile quarterbacks than, you know, Jared Goff and Joe Flacco. It's that so I think that's what's happened is Schwartz has adjusted his sort of scheme to then predicate on those interior players getting their one-on-ones, and because you have to double Malik Collins or you have to double Mason Graham because they're being so disruptive in interior, it suddenly opens it up for Garrett to then play upon their left tackle, which it's going to be a fun matchup for him this week because Taylor Decker, our left tackle, has been a no practice in all 3 days, and because he's got this lingering shoulder issue that he had to get cleanup surgery on in the off season, and he's been missing days at training every week to sort of make sure he's ready for Sundays, and he's been good, but you know, not rookie season him when he was electric. That's going to be a fun matchup to have, and then with Collins and Graham going up against what is a relatively inexperienced interior with Christian Mahogany, who started 2 games for us last season, injury relief after missing all the training camp in mono, and Tate Ratledge, who I know we drafted in the second round to be an interior piece for us, but he was supposed to be a centre and it didn't work out. So now he's gone back to right guard. And then Graham Glasgow, who is the real weak link on our offensive line right now. I know he's a vested veteran in the league. He's been with us. We drafted him. He then went to Denver to be their centre. It didn't work out and he came back. But he's now slid into centre instead of, all pro, all NFL centre Frank Ragnow. It is going to be that matchup of Collins, Graham, and Garrett that's going to be the one to watch because, unfortunately, considering he's coming off the 3rd highest graded offensive performance in PFF history, Penei Sewell is just going to shut down whoever is the bookend for Garrett. It is really, unfortunately, going to come down, for us at least, come down to your best 3 defensive line players against our weakest 4 offensive line players, and that could have some really good permutations for you guys against us on Sunday.
Do you think that's why Detroit is only a 9.5 point favorite? Because, you put up 52 against Chicago. You put up 38 on the road against Baltimore, in Baltimore, and we haven't been able to score 20 points in a game yet. Based on all that, I thought Detroit would be favored by at least 10 going into this game. But like I said, you're only a 9.5 point favorite, which, at least for me, is surprising.
It's for me, I think it comes down to that week 1 performance, which fared most of our season, because keep coming back to it. When we come up against these good defensive lines, that's always going to come back into people's minds, because the Ravens we obviously put up a load of points against the Ravens this week and gave them broke all these records against them on offense, like the 3rd most rushing yards they've ever given up, all these things. And then with the Bears game, where we just beat down on Ben Johnson, we broke our franchise record for most yards per play. Their defensive lines aren't as strong as yours and Green Bay's. Like, the Ravens were missing Adi Matabuike, who is one of my favorite blind players in the NFL. That is not a linebacker. I absolutely love him. I know we're missing Carl Van Noy, who Lions fans know a lot about, but they're missing sort of their star guys who were able to play on that. The Chicago defensive line, well, it's got pieces. Montez Sweat is a good edge rusher, but he's a low-end 1, top-tier edge 2. They've got Gervon Dexter and Grady Jarrett in the middle, who are good, but were ineffective. We were out to play on that, but going up against the Packers in week 1, where they have the stunts and the personnel to really prey upon our offensive line, because that was the issue. Was you look back on some of the stuff, like there's the infamous screenshot that if you search on Twitch, you can easily find the David Montgomery run on our sort of own 1 yard line, where the offense, depending on which offensive line you're looking at, they're all running. There's 2 different plays going on. Decker, our left tackle, and Ratledge, our right guard, are running 1 play, and then Mahogany, Glasgow, and Sewell are running another one, and it just lets their DT come in and nearly safety David Montgomery. So up against you guys, where you've got a dominant defensive line, you will be able to get pressure on us. You will be able to shut down our rush lanes. If that communication falls back onto what it was like week 1, where we start having missed assignments because people are panicking, and we're having to leave Laporte and Brock Wright, who's our tight end 2, in to block, and Monty and Gibbs to block in as well, rather than running routes, you'll be able to force us to be one-dimensional, and that's going to play into the back of Vegas' minds when they set the line. I think is you guys do have the potential to, especially if you get the ball first, put up points, and then your defensive line can tee off on us. You can make it a really hard game for us, like you did with the Packers last week, where you were able to force Jordan Love to make a Jordan Love mistake and prey upon that. And you were able to keep it for 3 out of the 4 quarters against the Ravens very close. And then the Bengals back, when they were good offensively, they had Joe Burrow. If Andre Schmidt hits that chip shot field goal, you've beaten them, and you're looking at 2-1 instead of 1-2. So that defensive line is the linebackers. And the linebackers are like Devin Bush and Carson Schwezinger. I know obviously JOK being out was a big blow for you guys in the offseason, but the fact they've stepped up as well, that front 6 is just going to terrorize our offensive line and Gibbs, Monty, and Laporta, where it is going to force us to be one-dimensional initially, where we're going to have to rely on Amon-Ra, J-Mo, Tesla, Khalif Raymond to get the ball moving initially, because your front six is just going to cause havoc for us, at least for the first half, until we start getting those adjustments in. We start working out, okay, this is what's going to work. This is not.
Right.
That's what happened last week. We saw against the Ravens, we tried all these different things, and then we saw that duo was working, and we just duoed them into the ground. This week, that's not going to work against you guys. So we've got to find what run concept works. Is it counter? Is it wham? Is it pin and pull that we've done it a couple of times? Is it the outside zone? We've got to find that run game that gets around your best part of your defense, while also making sure we're not just running the ball and becoming one-dimensional, because as soon as we become one-dimensional, we can be beat. That's how Green Bay got us in week one. They played a lot of sort of cover 3, cover 4, kept everything in front of them, and just let their front six just tee off us on our offensive line. And it worked. And that's the kind of game plan you guys can easily have against us in our own backyard, and cause this to be more of a dogfight than it appears on paper. Because, the Lions, who have been leading the league in scoring the past couple of years, have been consistently up there against an offense that, hasn't put up 20 points yet. For everyone looking on the outside that just looks at it, they'll be like, the Lions should easily win this. But when you actually start drilling down into it, the Browns can really cause us problems where the matchup between our offense and your defense is a lot closer than people might think.
Yeah. And I like this question from Grandizer. Which team does this win mean more to? The Browns or Lions? Lions trying to stay on top of the NFC. Browns proving they can beat top teams. I would probably argue the Browns, because, I personally predicted them to go 6-11 at the start of the season. I don't know anybody who said, oh yeah, the Browns are a playoff team. I think most people thought they'd be in the bottom of the barrel again in the AFC, near the top of the draft next year, maybe in position to draft, an Arch Manning or a Drew Al or somebody like that. So I would say it would mean more for the Browns, because it would mean we would have beaten a second straight top NFL contender, and this time we would have done it on the road.
Yeah, I agree with you, probably the Browns for that exact reason. But to state the claim for the Lions, it is, we want to just completely erase that week one outcomes one, where people can say, yep, that was just week one. It's just some hijinks, betting in new coordinators, a new offensive line. They just came up against a really good team, and sometimes that happens because you look at some of the games we've got coming up in the next month or two. I know obviously next week we're playing the Bengals on a shorter week. That hopefully should be an easier game considering things. But then after that, we've got Philadelphia. We've got to go to Arrowhead, where I know obviously the Chiefs haven't looked so good so far. It looks like Travis Kelce is more interested in planning his future wedding rather than actually playing football. But the Chiefs are still the Chiefs. They'll find their way probably. Got to go to Philadelphia. Got to play the Rams
on Monday night.
Yeah, so we just want to make sure we stay ahead of the sort of the contenders, like the Philadelphia Eagles are dragging it out. The Packers, as much as we hate them, they're also 2-1, and they look like going to be a lot more scrappy. So we just need to make sure that while we can't overlook you guys and say you're an easy win and then get sort of stabbed in the back, we've got these sort of the games against you guys where, like, offense, our defense should hopefully hold your offense in check. It's just about putting points on the board. We win those games. We can't have what happened against the Bucs last year in week 2, where they came into our home ground. We thought, this is going to be easy. We just start passing the ball, not really expecting to run, and we lose that game because we played ourselves out of winning the game. We can't do that against you guys. And so if we get the win, it means a lot, because then we're 3-1. We've got that tiebreaker with Green Bay, which if it comes to the end of the year and we have another Lions-Vikings situation, but instead the purple people eaters, it's the cheese eaters, we've got that tiebreaker of, well, you guys didn't break the bounds. We did, and that means we're ahead of you in the division. We get that home field advantage in the playoffs, which admittedly we should. Doesn't really matter last year after we got absolutely twonked by the Commanders with half-string defense. But it's sort of these common games are going to be the decider between us and the Packers, because they beat us in week 1. When they come to us for Thanksgiving, we're going to beat them. That's split. So then it's come down to these common games and whoever wins the most of them. So this is a leg up for us on that race with the Packers.
Yeah. No, you mentioned that Packers game, and I remember the reaction following that game was, the Lions look lost without Ben Johnson and without Aaron Glenn. And it feels like maybe it just took you guys a week to figure out what the heck you were doing on both sides of the ball with your new coordinators.
Potentially, yeah. So, defensively, start there with Calvin Shepherd, who was our linebackers coach. We promoted to DC when Glenn went to New York. We were 95% of the way there on defense. It was literally just that first half. Like, you look at the first 3 quarters, Josh Jacobs was running up 2 yards a carry, like you guys held him to. It's just in that fourth quarter where we got tired. We then gave up the bigger runs, and he finally got those rushing yards. On their first drive, we got them into 3rd and 6, 3rd and 7, 3rd and 10. And each time they just were able to hit the shot to convert. And unfortunately for us Lions fans, it was Terry and Arnold, our rookie corner, who was giving those up for the most part. There was that second touchdown drive. It was literally deep post to him where Terrian was playing it correctly. The safety wasn't there. Gives a big completion. The next play is a pick play on him with Jaden Reed, and Jaden Reed scores a touchdown. It was just finding those sort of things there. But on the offense, they just had the perfect game plan for us. I think one of our beat writers, who you might know, Jeff Risdon, who I know used to cover the Cleveland Browns, he now covers us. He put it best when he said, the Lions came to play football. The Packers came to play the Lions. They had the perfect game plan for us where, as I said, they played a lot of deep shell umbrella coverage where they kept everything in front of us, which stifled our deep routes, because that's what we like to do. We like to throw deep. We like to use the intermediate game as where Goff's is best. We couldn't do that. So then we were forced to throw it short to Jahmyr Gibbs, to Amon Ra and that. And they could just play on it. They just, as soon as we got the ball out, 3 people around to get the tackle, we were behind the 8 ball because we couldn't run the ball. And then we do have a good couple of drives, and Goff throws the uncharacteristic interception to Evan Williams. And suddenly that gives them that little in. And we were just stuck behind the 8 ball. Then we couldn't score. And it took us until pretty much the end of the game with Isaac Tesla making that amazing catch to even get a touchdown. So definitely bedding it in, but also Green Bay just had the perfect game plan to beat us on our schemes, unfortunately.
Yeah. It's funny, though, because, like, as soon as Green Bay traded for Micah Parsons, they were thrust to be the number 1 contender to Philadelphia. I have them beating the Ravens to win Super Bowl 60, and yet you guys have hung around in that conversation. You know, given that you just beat Baltimore and you beat down Chicago, you guys are once again being thrown into the conversation of, are the Lions that top contender to the Eagles alongside the Rams and the Packers, Buccaneers? I wouldn't put the 49ers in there. That's a different discussion for another day. It's crazy how you guys have opened this window of opportunity, but is that more because of Dan Campbell and what he's done? Or is it more because you traded for Jared Goff and brought in some fresh faces like a Monty and Jahmyr Gibbs and some of those other pieces?
I think it's a combination of all the above. So definitely for this season, I think it's just the national media kind of looking and seeing a brain drain from us losing the coordinators and thinking, well, they're not going to be hold this up. They forgot that this is a Dan Campbell team first and foremost. Like when we first started here, Anthony Lynn was our OC for the first season, for our first half of this first season. It wasn't working with him. Exactly. Like it just wasn't working. Him and Goff weren't on the same page. So when it came to the bye, we amicably parted ways. We agreed it wasn't working. And Dan Campbell took over play calling, and Goff, we went 3-1. We won 3 games. We tied 1, which was with the Steelers, where we had a punter kicking field goals by the end because of injuries, which was great. We had that turnaround, and then suddenly you bring in Ben Johnson, and it's the same on the defense. Where we've lost Aaron Glenn, who I've argued for years that he would be a better head coach than he was DC, because there was always this thing where he just wouldn't adjust at heart. He wouldn't make adjustments. He'd have his game plan and that was it. The only time he'd adjust is when we lost like Aiden Hutchinson, he'd suddenly start blitzing more and all this. Calvin Shepherd has been in the system since day one. He specifically came here because of what Dan Campbell said, where they were doing the call. Like Shepherd's like, do you want me to shave my dreads? And Dan was like, no, I want you to be you. And all these. And while we're running the same kind of scheme where it's a 4-3 over, so Derek Barnes is playing that sort of jack role where he can be a stand-up edge rusher, but also drop in coverage and do all that. We're making tiny little tweaks. We're playing a bit more zone in that. It's the same people. It's just people forgot that and they saw the flashy new toy in Green Bay and were like, well, they're suddenly going to win because the Lions can't win 15 games again and they won't sort of lose 2 against the Buffalo and the Bucks. They won't go 15-2. They're going to lose a load more games and Green Bay are going to get better and all this. But they neglect to remember that, one, this is a Dan Campbell team, and you look at our defense through the second half of last year, most of them are now on the street. Like, we lost Aiden Hutchinson. We lost Marcus Davenport in week 3 when he had his arm broken by a random freak play against Paris Johnson Jr. We had to obviously trade for Za'Darius Smith for a few, so we actually had to start an edge rusher. We lost him, Lee McNeil, against Buffalo Bills, which was the real sort of loss, and hopefully he'll be back in the second half of this year to give us that interior presence. We lost Carlton Davis to I believe it was a broken jaw. We lost all these pieces. We lost Alexander Loney. We lost Derek Barnes. We lost all these pieces. So you look at the sort of defense that we fielded by sort of Christmas time last year. It was Darius Smith, Jack Campbell, Brian Branch, Kirby Joseph, Terry Arnold, and a load of street free agents. We were literally picking people off the street, off people's practice squads and saying, right, you're starting for us in 3 days. And yet we won 15 games, but the national media forgot that because the new big flashy toy and the whole thing of, well, Aaron Rodgers won a Super Bowl with Green Bay when he's 27. Oh, Brett Favre did as well. Let's have a look at how old Jordan Love is. Oh, Jordan Love's 27. Does this mean Green Bay's going to win the Super Bowl? They forgot that at heart, Detroit is Dan Campbell's team. And what we did to the Bears and what we did to the Ravens hopefully reminded them where Carl Brandt and all that are now saying, oh, yeah, this has always been Dan Campbell's team. They're finally awake to it. And hopefully everyone else will be awake to it, because there's one thing that Dan Campbell does better than anyone, and it was proven in the Ravens game. He plays the analytics so well for what is classed as a meathead. Next Gen Stats said in the Ravens game that all 4 go for it decisions on 4th down were the right calls. What does Jim Harbaugh do when he's got a 4th and 7 late into the 4th quarter? He punts the ball away and we score a touchdown and we put the game to bed. That's the thing that really helps, I think, is that Dan Campbell trusts his players, trusts his teams. When we're backs against the wall, he trusts us to get out of it because we've been there. We've gone from day one with Jared Goff throwing to no one and winning no games and all this, to Amon-Ra catching the game-winning touchdown against the Vikings for our first win of the Dan Campbell regime, to gutting it out last year, getting to the playoffs with a half-broken defense and Goff and everyone having the offense having to carry. And then, come up against the Commanders team that was just ready to play ball and were more fit and knew how to beat us. None of that's changed, really. All that's changed is we've changed coordinators to someone who was here. They've both been here. Morton was here when we set up the Ben Johnson offense in 2022. He's doing the same things. Shep's doing the same things. The only thing that's really changed is we've swapped out one of our corners in Carlton Davis to DJ Reed. We've drafted a couple of linemen and a new ex-receiver. Pretty much everyone else player-wise is the same, and yet everyone expected a massive fall-off.
Yeah. Is John Morton, I know he's your offensive coordinator, but is he the one that calls plays for you guys?
For the most part. So he's up in the booth, like you'll probably see it on the TV coverage on Sunday. He's up in the booth. He calls the plays. The only time that he doesn't really is on maybe some like the sort of 4th down decisions, then it goes through Brad. But for the most part, John Morton is the one calling plays with Dan's input, but in the planning every week, it's Dan, it's John Morton, it's Goff. Goff's in those meetings, and it's Hank Fraley, who is our offensive line coach. He's also a run game coordinator. Okay. Again, Hank Fraley, a familiar face to you guys, because obviously he played center for you for a long time, I believe, when he was in the pros. They all sit there, they come up with a game plan, and then it's Morton, and you'll see, as I say, you see him on Sunday sitting there with his arm up against the wall, calling the plays, and most of the time, they're great. There's a couple that we don't like. 3rd downs, there's going to be a load of slow developing screens. That's the new draw play for us. So watch for them. But for the most part, Morton is play calling. And after he had the wobble of week 1 and coming up against a perfect defense, he's just got it on point, I think, for the defenses we play.
Okay. So with us, Kevin Stefanski is not only our head coach, but he is our play caller, even though we have an offensive coordinator in Tommy Reese, who we hired after we fired Ken Dorsey, because Ken Dorsey's offense was terrible last year for us. But I almost wonder, like, how our offense would be different if we actually allowed Tommy Rees to call the plays instead of Stefanski. I get it. We hired Stefanski because of what he did with Minnesota, but I just wonder how our offense would be different if we actually allowed our offensive coordinator to call the plays.
Yeah.
Like we allowed Jim Schwartz to call the plays defensively, and our defense is wrecking people. Like we haven't allowed a 100-yard rusher yet this season. So it just makes me wonder how our offense would be different. You said it, like Dan Campbell, John Morton, Jared Goff are all in those meetings together.
Yeah.
Like I just wonder if we had Tommy Rees calling plays and Dylan Gabriel as our starting quarterback, and we did that same type of thing where it was Stefanski, Tommy Rees, and Dylan Gabriel, could we develop not necessarily the same type of offense that you guys have, but that same type of culture? You know what I mean?
Yeah, 100%. Especially since I know Tommy Rees a bit. I know he was the Alabama OC for a year, wasn't he, with Jalen Milroe? So he's used to working with QBs like Dylan Gabriel, and Dylan Gabriel, who been to 2-3 different colleges in the pros. So again, been in different systems, because obviously he was at Oregon, but before that, I believe he was at Oklahoma, and then before that, he was playing for one of the Florida. I think it was UCF. So he's been in 3 different systems himself. And while Stefanski, I know his background is actually defensive back when he played football, but he's been in that sort of Minnesota sort of system, and he knows the Shanahan and that perfect culture of maybe Stefanski bringing in some of the run calls that are there because they work, and then having Tommy Rees, who has also got a background in tight ends coach. That's the new thing, it seems, with us doing it with Ben Johnson, and that tight ends coach is being good offensive coordinators. Just that nice collaboration, because that's what works for us. That's what Anthony Lynn wasn't doing. He was calling plays that didn't fit Goff. So that's what we did in that offseason in between 2021 and 2022 is Dan Campbell, Ben Johnson, Jared Goff, John Morton, Hank Fraley, Anton Randall Leal, who's now the assistant head coach and wide receivers coach for the Bears that Ben took with him. Lieutenant Engstrand, who's now the offensive coordinator for Aaron Glenn in New York. They all sat down and they basically said to Goff, what do you like doing? What do you like doing? Let's build an offense around that. And that's how we suddenly went from doing what we did in 2021 to a load of these intermediate throws, a lot more play action, bunch formations, condensed formations. That's one thing you're going to see on Sunday is we do a lot of like those condensed formations where suddenly you burst out like bunches out. We did that and it 100% worked. So that might be the thing that needs to happen maybe during the bye or at the end of the season is, whoever's going to be your starting QB going forward, him, whoever's your head coach, offense coordinator, all these people sit down and you have that collaboration, because that's what happens. Like, so the play I mentioned earlier in the 4th down that Gibbs scored his 2nd touchdown on, that literally came about. That's been installed since they drafted Gibbs. And then they were joking around in the sort of film review. They mentioned the player, like, Amra's like, no, please don't call it. Please don't call it. And then Johnny Morton, obviously joking, was like, oh yeah, fine, we're definitely going to call it then. And there was a play earlier in the Ravens game where Goff was at the line. They called it. Goff was at the line and saw that they left the A gap unblocked. And so with QB sneaks it on a 3rd and 1.
Right.
This is sort of collaboration where Goff has all the power at the line to change the plays. He's done it. So as I said, with that QB sneak, he did it infamously against the Chargers where we, a couple of years ago, where the wrong personnel came onto the field and we had one play called, it was the wrong. Goff changes at the line and David Montgomery takes that play for a 70-yard rushing touchdown. It's that nice collaboration where, you've got a play caller and you've got the head coach who weighs in. The ultimate power needs to come down to the QB because there's only so much a coach can see from the sideline or up in the booth. It has to come onto the QB. He has to see what he sees and knows what he likes to then call the plays and make the checks at the line against the right thing, because we've seen what happens when your offensive coordinator or your head coach is playing Madden on the sideline with the QB giving him everything. That was Goff with McVay, and sometimes it gets you good stuff. They obviously got to the Super Bowl, but a lot of the time it just ruins the QB because they're forced into situations and plays they don't like. It ruins their confidence and it tanks your season.
Yeah, that's one of my biggest problems with the Browns is too many times they try to fit a square peg into a round hole where they'll draft a quarterback, whether it was Brandon Weeden or Colt McCoy, or they'll sign a quarterback, Seneca Wallace, Jake Delhomme, Derek Anderson, Brady Quinn. I could go on. And instead of looking at what that quarterbacks did well, whether it was, at their previous stop or when they were at college, and trying to develop an offense that fits their skill set, like what you guys have done for Jared Goff, the Browns have just said, here's our offense. We're going to stick you in it, whether you can run it or not. Like, for example, I really liked Colt McCoy coming out of the University of Texas. And I was like, okay, if we can develop an offense that fits him, this could work. But we didn't do that. So, of course, it didn't pan out for him here in Cleveland. I know you didn't ultimately get to the mountaintop with Matthew Stafford. And, of course, you had Megatron, one of the greatest wide receivers of all time. But still, you guys were constantly near the top of the division, or you were at least in the mix for the playoffs with Matthew Stafford. And I feel like a lot of that is because you looked at what Stafford did well at the University of Georgia, and when you drafted him, you didn't just say, okay, Stafford, you're going to run our offense no matter if you can run it or not. You looked at what he did well, and you said, here's how we're going to develop our offense. And you've done the same thing with Jared Goff, whether it's with Ben Johnson or now with John Morton. I'd like to see the Browns do that, but they are so stubborn. For some reason, they don't want to do that.
Yeah, I think that's you hitting the head there, that they're too stubborn. That's the good thing about Dan is he does give his 2 pence on things. He will happily, as you say, maybe suggest things on the 4th down, and with the defense as well. He puts his hand in there, but ultimately he trusts his coaches. He trusts Dave Phipp to do the special team stuff, and which has been bad for us. That's nothing to look for on Sunday. He trusts John Morton to call the plays, draw all that up, and do all that. He trusts Calvin Shepherd, who, is a rookie defensive coordinator, never played called before all this. Trust him to run the defense because he knows that's what gets the best out of them. That's what made Ben Johnson one of the best offensive minds in the league recently, and now he's going off and doing his thing in Chicago. That's what the best teams do, it seems, is they have that collaboration. They have what I think one of our podcasts over here calls servant leadership, where Dan's mentality is, right, okay, how can I help you be the best coach, get the best game plan here? Is it me? I sit down with the tight ends, let's say, and give them extra things on blocking in this certain run scheme or against this player? Or is it I go to the running backs and say X, Y, and Z? They all collaborate and they all look at each other. So I know there's listening to some of the stuff from the quarterback and that Goff will go into the defensive back meeting sometimes and say what he sees from receivers. If he was calling this play against our defense, what would he do? And that's how you evolve. There's all this collaborative leadership in the lines, all the way up to the top with Sheila Ford Hamp, who was our owner, who took over from Martha Firestone Ford, who was our owner through most of the Quinn Trisha era up until that last year. That's the first thing she wanted. She brought in everyone that was involved. So it was her, it was Chris Spielman, our famous sort of linebacker, who was then around as special advisor, and then Ron Wood, who was our CEO. And they came with this whole thing of collaboration, staying with the lines of identity and all that. They then signed Brad Holmes, and Dan Campbell interviewed them, had them around, and they signed up to it. And that's been the mantra since day one. And that's how ultimately we've gone from where we were today, is, as you nail on the head, Dan Campbell is happy to trust his coaches and collaborate with them instead of being stubborn and being, it's my way or the highway, which was maybe a bit of what the previous guy that we used to have, good old pencil head, what he did, it was his way or the highway. That's why we lost Darius Slay. That's why we lost Glover Quinn. He was one of my favorite lines as I was getting into sport as a potential free safety myself. Loved Glover Quinn. So we lost him. We lost Quandre Diggs for that same reason. We bled all this talent because they just didn't want to put up with Patricia's stuff, and he wouldn't collaborate with them and put them in the right positions. And so we lost them. It's been a complete culture change for us with Dan Campbell, and that's why we're so successful. So, yeah, it hopefully, as I say, in this offseason, Stefanski can wake up. Maybe this is what you need, just us waking you up to that by playing you, and then he makes the right changes, because otherwise it's just you're just going to keep going on that roundabout. It'll be the next guy. It might, as you say, with Juala to Penn State, all got all the tools in the world. Like me and Ant will tomorrow be watching his game against Oregon as our live college watch along. Got all the tools, but can he put it together?
Win that game, please.
I know.
I'm a huge Penn State fan. So
I must say, you said that I've checked my Florida State score. We're 28-21 down against Virginia, so this is going to be fun. We twonks of Alabama for everyone, and now we can't even string it together against Virginia.
Yeah, I'm hoping you guys win that game, because I want to see that big showdown between Miami and Florida State.
Oh yeah, me too. Rumors are we've already got the college game day, so that'd be nice to see. And Lee Corso is supposed to come out and plant the spear for us. So.
I do like this. Since H. Fraley was a Brown, was the Honey Buns nickname ever a thing with the Cleveland fan base, or did it just percolate later in Detroit after hard knocks? I don't really know anything about that, to be honest. So I'm not really sure if that was a thing or not when he was here in Cleveland. But it sounds like that was a big thing in Detroit.
Yeah, so that's one of the things about Dan is that he has nicknames for everyone, and yeah, unfortunately for good old Frank Haley, one of his nicknames is Honey Buns. So that's why it's the things like Ali McNeil, he's called Twinkle Toes before, and all the players that we have. Like Dan comes up with some mad nickname for them. We've had like Sawn Off for one of our UDFA DTs out of Appalachian State a couple of years ago. All of these, like some of them are boring, like Amon-Ra Saints. That's boring. But then yeah, you got like Coleslaw for Isaac Tesla was one. We had a tight end a couple of years called Derek Dees Jr. and all Dan Campbell would do. So famously, one of the bloopers at the end of Hard Knocks was him just going, "Ha, Dees nuts," just going around doing that. Like he's a nickname guy, and yeah, unfortunately for Hank, Honey Buns is one of his, which is like the complete opposite of like a big strapping offensive line coach who could probably throw you down and throw you into next Tuesday if you wanted to.
Yeah, let's see. Not to be pedantic, but I thought it was Deuce Staley. Huh? Oh,
Deuce Staley. Well, yeah. Deuce definitely had some things. So Deuce Staley was our old assistant head coach and running backs coach, and then went to Carolina for some family stuff. That was also on Hard Knocks when soon as it. But yeah, they were sticking that. But yeah, I think that it's a boy thing that it might be that Deuce came up with it, but I know Dan's definitely called him a couple of times, so that might be the true origin. But I know Dan loves his nicknames, as all coaches probably do.
By the way, Florida State just scored a touchdown to tie it up 28-28 against Virginia.
Thank God, I need this.
I know. Not trying to stress you out too much. I kind of wish these two teams were in the same division. It would be a fun matchup, because the Guardians and the Tigers are in the same division. The Cavaliers and the Pistons are in the same division. I did a project where I realigned the NFL, and I actually put the Browns and Lions in the same or I thought about putting the Browns and Lions in the same division. I would have done it with the Browns, the Bills, the Lions, and the Bears, actually, and called it the Great Lakes Division. Because
hell yes,
us and Buffalo, you got Lake Erie. Detroit, obviously, you have what is that, Superior?
I think so, yeah.
Or Huron, something. And then with Chicago, I think it's Lake. I get confused with all the Great Lakes, so forgive me, but they're all.
It's fine. I'm a Brit. I don't know. Like I've been to Chicago and Detroit. I've seen them, but I can't remember the names, because for me, I have to know like the really random like UK place names like Worcestershire and that. So if you don't know, I don't know. All I know is that I wish we could have it so we can bring back the Battle of Barge more often, because nothing says a rivalry like a 70-pound steamship trophy, does it?
No. Plus, Ohio State and Michigan have one of the fiercest rivalries in, honestly, all of sports. So why not have the Browns and Lions be in the same division? But then again, as a Lions fan, you probably don't want to leave the NFC North because you like having the rivalries with Green Bay and Chicago and Minnesota, the purple incarnation of Satan, as Tom Grossi likes to say. Shout out Tom Grossi. I just did a video collaboration with him last week.
Ooh, no.
So I appreciate you joining me. This helps me continue the quest for the second straight season to do a video collaboration for every game on the Browns schedule. I like doing these because I get to hear your perspective of the Browns as a Lions fan, and you get to hear my perspective of the Lions as a Browns fan. But before we get going, I'm going to give you my score prediction first, and here's my thing. Even though I'm a Browns fan, am I going to pick the Browns to win every single game? No. I am one of the most honest Browns fans you will meet.
Yeah.
As you hopefully realized. So if I don't think they're going to win a game, I'm not picking them. I know the line is only 9.5, mostly because of our defense, but I just feel like Amon-Ra, St. Brown, and Jameson Williams are going to go nuts this game. Because, well, I just do. Although the fact that you guys are playing on a short week coming off of a physical game could be in our favor, considering we played on Sunday, although that was also a physical defensive battle. But nonetheless, I'm going to say Detroit wins this game pretty comfortably. I think it'll be by 21. I got it 38-17.
Damn, I'm actually more conservative than that. Like, I agree with the 17. For some reason, that just seems to be your number this season, doesn't it? To scoring 17 points.
Yep.
But I have it a lot closer. I have us doubling up, and it'll be Lions 34, Browns 17. Like, it might be that going into the third quarter, it's pretty close with 17 all. But just that sort of finesse at the end. Maybe it's Dave Montgomery subs in for that fourth quarter, and it's just the battering ram that finally, breaks the defense apart. You probably won't get 100 yards. He's not going to get that nice breakaway run he did against the Ravens on Monday, but it's just enough, and we finally just pull ahead in the fourth quarter.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you this quick before we go. Do you think that'll play a factor that you guys are playing on a short week? The fact that you were in Baltimore on Monday night, or do you think that's like a non-factor coming into this game?
Oh, it definitely will, as I said, because we are a bit knocked up. So Al-Qadim Mohammed, who was the guy that really broke out on Monday, he's questionable with a knee injury. Taylor Decker, left tackle's questionable with the shoulder injury, but that's every week. And we have lost 3 of our sort of special teamers with Zach Cunningham with a hamstring he pulled in training yesterday, and Daniel Thomas, who's one of our star special teams as a gunner, he broke his forearm. He's going to be out indefinitely. And then Sione Varkey, who's one of our kick returners and key special teamers. He was like the 3rd best special teamer last year when we drafted him. They're all out. So it will play a factor. But at the same time, they call it Honolulu Blue Flu for a reason. We're the ones that cause the physical games and cause the other teams to be out. So hopefully we don't catch it ourselves, and we come in on Sunday at our home ground and just hopefully just play the best game we can. We might be a bit tired initially, which is why you might be able to pull out a lead, especially if you get the ball first, because defensively we just can't stop teams on our first drive. They score points on them consistently, even if it's a Roman Dunze massive touchdown over a coverage bust. But hopefully by the end, because it's going to be a physical battle no matter what, we're both going to get tired by the end, I think. So hopefully it won't matter by the end. And that's where, the Amon-Ra's, the Jamos, the Gibbs, the Montes, that little extra bit of talent we've got on offense can hopefully grit us out the win. Yeah.
I got Amon-Ra being player of the game for you guys. For us, I could see it being either one of our rookie running backs. I would probably go Quinshon Judkins. But if you got nothing else, I really appreciate it. And if you're doing a live stream, I'll pop in and say hi and maybe do a bit of trash talk on Sunday.
Oh, we love the trash talk, and for us UK fans, it's going to be extra fun because we obviously doing our live watch along. Hopefully, Ant might be a bit late from work, but they're doing this new thing where one of the 6 o'clock games for us, so the early afternoon slate for you, they're putting on terrestrial TV with like a game show element. This week it's Lions versus Browns. They'll hopefully have some Lions and Browns fans doing all these wacky games in the commercial breaks for us. So be an extra little bit of fun for us UK fans to watch that as well.
All right, I wish I could watch that, but I get the regular Fox broadcast, so
good.
But like I said, I'll pop into the live chat, say hi. If I'm in position to trash talk, I will. Joe Flacco probably won't let me, but whatever. Please start Dylan Gabriel in the second half. That'd be great.
Exactly.
But
probably causes some issues.
Yeah. If we could replicate what Alabama did in the national championship, but this is the Browns. I'm asking too much. So I appreciate it, and I will talk to you later.
Yep. Cheers, boss.